Hello friends, it's Klauds and I am back with another video. So today, I wanted to tell you guys my thoughts on the Band series by Nicholas Eames. Now, so far, there are only 2 books, but I personally think each can stand on its own. But in order to get the emotional gravity of the whole thing, you'd have to read both books. And I don't know when the 3rd book is coming out, but there is one. So anyway, the books that are currently out are Kings of the Wyld. This is the 1st book in the series. And then there's Bloody Rose. Now, this review will have no spoilers. Maybe very, very minimal for this, but yeah, I don't think it would count as spoilers. But anyway, so when you watch this video, tread lightly. So yeah, we'll start with Kings of the Wyld. So what did I think about Kings of the Wyld? So if you don't know, Nicholas Eames used 70s rock bands as inspiration for Kings of the Wyld. And for example, they use the term band of mercenaries. Get it? Because they're a band. So basically, our main protagonist or narrator is Clay Cooper, who was once in a band called Saga with his four other best friends. And after 20 years, they've barely even spoken to each other. They've barely kept up with each other's lives. And everything changes when one of his best friends shows up on his doorstep asking him to help him rescue his daughter.
Everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
So basically, if we were to put it in, modern day band music terms, they're basically a disbanded band. And 20 years later, one of them asked for one last reunion concert.
Dude, we're getting the band back together.
Do you get how cool that concept is? And this whole world building, pretty much the whole idea of bands and the mercenaries in this world is very much inspired by just the music industry. They use the term bookers, managers, tours. So when you're reading this, you kind of get it. And me, being someone who's not that all familiar with things in the 70s and stuff and music, I'm sure that if someone who was more knowledgeable than me in that aspect were to read this book, I'm sure there would be so many Easter eggs and references that were inserted that I most likely missed. This found family, friends. It's the found family for me, okay? And these guys are old men, but I would protect every single one of them.
I am my mother's son!
They have all gone through some shit. Now, I give this book 4.5 stars out of 5 only because I was a little underwhelmed by how it all ended, but it was still enjoyable nonetheless. And the whole adventure, the vibe of the whole thing, it was just really fun to read. The comedy, the jokes, just the characters. Oh, it was so good. I really loved it. And what made reading, this whole reading experience more enjoyable is that Nicholas Eames actually made a Spotify playlist called Kings of the Wyld. And I'm not sure if those are songs that inspired him to write the book, songs he used as inspiration, or is the playlist something that really sets the whole tone of the book. You're supposed to listen to it while you're reading it, and in a way it sort of syncs together or whatever. I don't know. Maybe it's both. Maybe I'm overthinking the latter, but I don't care. the playlist added to the reading experience, and I absolutely loved it.
Music is science. That's the science of my life.
I would just like to say that I would murder for Moog. Okay? That's really much all I'm gonna say about all characters. And let's just say that because of the whole plot, like I mentioned earlier, the whole reason why they wanted to reunite, let's just say at the end, I went and hugged my dad because, yeah. This book will make you think about, you know, if not your father, then your mom, or any parental figure that you have. So, yeah. Next is Bloody Rose. Here's what I find absolutely brilliant about Nicholas Eames. Choosing which character to be the narrator is actually, like, he's very clever about it, okay? If you've read The Great Gatsby, it's very much narrator on the outside looking in, if you know what I mean. Like, the narrator is not necessarily the main protagonist of the story. I don't know, that's what I feel. For example, Bloody Rose. So, Rose is the daughter of, you know, she's the one they need to rescue. But anyway, this happens years later, and I honestly thought at first glance that the narrator would, you know, be Rose. She's like front and center. She's the titular character. Kind of expected that. But no, she's not the narrator. It's actually a bard.
Abort yourself!
Oh, oi! Oi! Fuck off! I'm so glad that I could just bring you all together like this. Unbelievable.
Nicholas Eames literally made a bard the narrator of his book.
Leave off! He's just a bard.
It's really small, but it's such a good detail. Don't you guys think so? I don't know, like, that's just me. While reading this book, just like Kings of the Wyld, Nicholas Eames also made a playlist for Bloody Rose, but instead of 70s rock bands, he used 80s music. Which is honestly more my vibe. And just songs like Jump by Van Halen, Walking on Sunshine, Heroes by David Bowie, those were like, yes! Pat Benatar, just, oh, I love it. Like, it's set such a good vibe for Bloody Rose. And this one, honestly, I'll be honest, it took me a little while longer to read Bloody Rose compared to Kings of the Wyld. I think I finished Kings of the Wyld in maybe 3 days. This, I think I finished in about a week. And it's not because the book was any less good than Kings of the Wyld. I think it's just because I had Kings of the Wyld on my brain so much that I kept expecting it to be similar. But obviously, just because, you know, it's the same series doesn't necessarily mean it would have the completely same vibe. Does that make sense? Because, like, here, your narrator and main characters are, like, middle-aged men who are grown up, who are wise, and there's still character development, but their character development's still pretty much cooked, if that makes sense. Because I'm not saying that because you're older there's no more character development for you to do. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that they already have their priorities set. We're looking through the eyes of adults who are wise in their thoughts, who think, you know, like, critically, though at the same time there's still a bunch of dumbasses. Yeah? Whereas here, you have characters who are in their late teens to maybe late 20s. Early 30s is the max I would go. But yeah. So these characters have a lot of growing to do, a lot of maturing to do.
The only puzzle he hasn't solved is how to grow up.
And they're still finding ways to, figure out the trauma that they went through as when they were younger, or, their backstories, whereas here, it's so different because they're adults. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, this vibe reads a little more It's not YA. It's not YA. It feels a little bit more YA because our narrator is in her late teens. But that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. It's actually a very interesting counter. And he's just so brilliant with how he writes his novels. Like, I don't know, because when you read a series, you kind of get used to one or maybe multiple characters narrating in different chapters. But here you have one character narrating the whole thing and a different character narrating this one. So how he's able to do this is just so utterly mind-blowing for me. And of course, in Bloody Rose, a lot of the characters who are mentioned here do show up. So you'd probably definitely still have to read Kings of the Wyld first. You might be able to get by just reading Bloody Rose, but honestly, you gotta read both. You're not gonna get the full experience without reading both books. And honestly, I am really excited for the third book. At the rate he's going, I'm gonna assume he's gonna do 90s music next, which I'm very excited for. Not gonna lie. I'm really wondering whose story that's gonna be about now. I wanna know who the narrator is gonna be, honestly. And yeah, also at the end of this book, I had to go and give my dad another big fat hug. Because, yeah. I'm not gonna say any more than that. I'm just gonna say that I needed to give my dad a big fat hug. So, yeah, that was my experience reading the Band series by Nicholas Eames. So far, these are the books in the series. As I mentioned earlier, I rated Kings of the Wyld 4.5 stars. And just because this was a little more cooked, like the ending was a little more cooked, if you know what I mean, I rate this a 5 out of 5 stars. Like, literally, the only reason why this is only getting 4.5 is because I was just underwhelmed by the ending. And I get that maybe the reason why the ending wasn't really that clear is because what happens to the characters in Kings of the Wyld is revealed anyway in Bloody Rose, but it didn't feel like a complete ending. Like, it felt like there should have been more. And that's really my only complaint about it. But other than that, I thoroughly enjoyed these two books. The comedy is really great. The vibe, the world building, it's really good. And yeah, those are my thoughts on these two books. I hope that you found this video informative and convincing enough to get you to read this series. I hope that you enjoyed. Please like if you did. Also like if you didn't. Comment below, subscribe, click on the bell icon, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!